This is Between Hook Sets. I'm Jason Walter from In Through the Outdoors with my partner in slime, Curt Underhill from the fishing crew.
Well, I already messed something up because that wasn't right. we missed the intro to it, I think.
Well, that's all right. We'll just let it go anyway.
Yeah. Well, Tommy, how are you doing tonight, buddy?
Not too bad. Trying to get ready for, eat way too much and feel like crap the next day because, you can't stop eating it, so.
No. That's why I said that's why Jason's not here tonight because he's got to mentally prepare for tomorrow night.
Yeah.
So we were trying to get a guest on, but I appreciate you filling in for the old Jason Walters. And I guess, it's not going to be a lack of conversation with us two tonight. So we can figure it out. But I guess obviously the big thing going on in South Dakota right now, deer opener, East River last weekend. I went, deer were not moving very well. But after what happened yesterday, they should be moving now. So hopefully that's good. Obviously, that Aberdeen area and eastern South Dakota is probably pretty well locked up, and that means ice is coming soon.
Yeah, there's definitely some movement. I know our deer season, what is it? This Wednesday or today or yesterday was the last day for rifle. I'd have to go back and check, but I know the guys were saying that they were just starting to see with this cold front, starting to see some deer coming in. So I'm pretty sure it'll be one of those deals. Those guys will be cursing the lack of cold weather come especially this weekend when we get snow. So
yeah, 100%. I think our deer I talked to a buddy of mine who guides quite a bit, West River. He said that, couple days for the season, the whitetails were pretty much about 2/3 done. And then the muleys were about half done in rut. And I think they were pinned down with does. And I saw deer for about the first hour of the day. And then after that, it was nothing. So I'm looking forward to getting out this weekend and trying to get on something. I only saw one deer. Of course, the only deer I seen to shoot was literally 10 minutes before shooting light. And I watched it walk into a set of trees that I couldn't go into, and it never came out.
Wow, I think that's every deer hunter or big game hunter fell into that.
Yeah.
That, or I always make the joke that you can be the biggest, baddest guy in the world, and if you get in your stand or whatever you're hunting in, when it's pitch black, all of a sudden things move. Not moving, but you swear you've seen something move. And as the sun comes up, you're like, oh, it was a tree the whole time. But you had it in your mind. It was the biggest buck you've ever seen in your life. If you just stay until sun comes up, and then you realize, no, it's a tree.
No, honestly, that one, it was definitely a deer because I got on my pickup about 15 minutes probably before sunrise. I probably watched him for 5. Before, my shooting hour, I had a couple hundred yards to walk in. And not a hard walk, nothing really to sneak into. So had to kind of pop up over a hill is all I had to do. So it wasn't like I had to get out there super early and sit. And I get out of my truck, tie my boots, and I look back and I'm like, holy crap. It ran up the east, got on top of just as that sun was starting to crest, and you could see him. And I'm like, I didn't range him. I didn't have my binoculars on. I go yell at my cousin. I got my door open. I'm like, what time is it? And he's like, you got 10 minutes. I'm like, oh, give me my binoculars. And I got a good look at him, and he stood there. I probably messed around for 5 minutes watching him, and I'm like, I'm not going to move. My door's going to stay open on my pickup. Like, I'm going to stand right here just in case this thing stands here. No, of course not. Of course not, so... Yeah, I feel blood flowing, heart pumping, so.
Yeah. And I suppose, this colder temp, those guys that are on the river, they're jonesing because that means that bait fish, whatever around, is starting to push even deeper now. So.
So I was talking to a guy called me last weekend. He was out in the Akaska area, 23 foot of water, jigging minnow.
Yeah.
And he said, I fished with him the weekend prior. We caught one right at 20 and just one over at 15 inches. Saw a lot of shit, saw a lot of marks, couldn't get anything to bite. And then he went up this last weekend, jigging them in 15, at 23 foot of water, jigging them up.
Yeah, I heard a couple guys were getting them on jigging wraps, kind of the same area, about the same thing, anywhere from 18 to 25. So
yeah. He said he heard shallower. They tried under 20, that 18 to 20, nothing, and they slid out to 23, and that's why they started getting them. Their biggest fish today was 23, but they caught plenty of fish, he said.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There's always so much. I always get people going, what are you doing this weekend? Where are you going? There is just abundance for an outdoorsman. There's so many things. You got pheasant hunting, deer hunting, waterfowl, fishing. A lot of guys will put away their boats, as soon as it starts getting cold, but a lot of us guys will keep them out all the way up till the very last, especially over by you, you can fish right there,
year round.
Yeah, year round. You don't have to put them away. So this is kind of an interesting year. We're not quite to the ice, and we're starting to get some temperatures, but we'll see what Mother Nature does, because we've all had this one too many times where we see it get cold, get some snow, and then the week later we're back to 65. So I'm not getting on it just yet.
Well, it was crazy because we had 50-mile-an-hour winds yesterday, and I was talking to Chasen because he's in Mobridge now. He's heading back to Brookings for Thanksgiving. That's why he didn't join us tonight. But I said, "You got your money badgers for your rock hopping?" He goes, "I had them all packed, and I was told everything's locked up." And I'm like, in 50-mile-an-hour winds, everything's locked up. That's, but it must have laid down long enough last night to get a skim coat on it. But I've seen it, that northern South Dakota where I do a lot of duck. I went up duck hunting one time up by Eureka. We went out Friday night. It was a blizzard weekend. It was Halloween. It was starting to ice up a little bit. We went out on the lake. We went out on this pond. We duck hunted Friday night. Saturday morning, I walked on the ice. I couldn't break it. I had bars. I was trying to bake it. I'm like, we're done. Like, this is it. I mean, we hunted it Friday night and past dark, obviously, past sundown. Picked up all our stuff. Saturday morning, went out there, and I walked on that ice.
Yeah, that's crazy.
There.
And that's one of those things, we've all ran into that too, waterfowl hunting, especially over water. It seems like unless you got it ahead of time and got a bubbler or something to keep that water open, and even like, I forget all the brand names, but they got ice eaters and all these that run on 12 volt. Even that, when this water gets as cold as it is right now, and you get that real cold temperature at night, I've seen guys have to get a chainsaw to cut them out because they get frozen. So
yeah, I'm not a guy to leave my decoys. I've been burned by that too many times, and I'm so glad nobody talked me into leaving my decoys, because that'd have been another time I got burned. But I picked them up, and I'm like, nope, we're not leaving them. And we'd had to go back in the spring to get them because that thing never opened back up that year. So that happens, But I mean, getting into ice fishing, we've had a lot of talks about guiding and that kind of stuff, but you're going to start ice guiding probably around Christmas, just after Christmas time is usually when you get up here.
Yeah, usually first of the year is my safe bet, just because of the holidays. I mean, I don't, as much as I travel anyway, I know my limits to keep the marriage without being single. So I don't push it,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, and there's this year, I don't know, everybody's saying with all this snowfall, we're going to have tons more snow on the ice. It's just hard to say, I always say, I just wait and see, because you try to plan for what's going to happen, it ain't going to work.
I think you need to get one of the. I think that's your new ride.
Yeah. I know those guys on the Mississippi, they run airboats quite a bit.
Yeah.
Some perch, but man, I tell you what, the amount of money, I don't think anybody would believe, when I was in my teens, that someone would say, oh, you could spend $150,000 easy on a snow bear rigged, to go on that. I mean, it's crazy, and it's, you look at the hubs or the flip overs, the way people put in these V4 heater. I mean, it just blows me away to where, heck, when I started, it was on a 5-gallon bucket, a metal bucket. And my grandpa would take a metal coffee can, and put charcoal in it.
Yep.
And put charcoal on fire and set it in the bucket. And then you had wood seats that sat over the bucket with holes, so that way the heat would come up. And that was the old broom handle with the pick. You jam in the ice and unravel off the way.
You wrap it up around it.
Oh yeah. Yep. And I just always chuckle once in a while when I see, new stuff come out. And of course, every year there's always something, so.
Yeah. I mean, 100%. Like I didn't start on that phase, but we were 3-piece of plywood and a tarp.
Yep.
Get the poles, put them in there, blue tarp, and if you were bougie, you had the black thicker tarp on your shack.
Yeah.
But I mean, I remember coming out to the river and fishing down at North Bend, and we had the Escorn had a fiberglass. It looked like a hay bale stack, right? It was all made out of fiberglass. The tops came off for goose hunting, and we ice fished in that thing all the time out at North Bend.
Yep.
Lanterns, kerosene lanterns. I mean, that was what we did. There wasn't any heaters. I mean, it was a, kerosene heater in the corner.
Yeah. And if you had a heater, it was a sunflower. And if it touched anything, it melted it or caught it on fire.
I mean, back then we didn't have a sunflower heater. The sunflower heaters came out later.
Yeah.
And I remember when I don't know, one year for Christmas, I asked my dad for a clam ice shack, and I got my first flip over, and I swear to God, I had it for about 5 trips until my dad, before my dad threw it back on the sunflower heater and burnt the thing.
Yep.
It's
crazy.
But where it's gone, I mean, I love it, right? I mean, I love the innovation of the industry. I love all that side of it. People complain about live scope or whatever else, man. We wouldn't be here. It wouldn't be the sport it is without innovation. I mean, I can't imagine talking my wife into dragging 3 pieces of plywood onto the lake with a tarp.
Yeah, it's, and like my wife, her favorite ice trip ever is we did Upper Red Lake one year right after Christmas, from like the day after Christmas till New Year. And she was just dumbfounded. She's like, this is so nice. Like, you're in your pajamas, watching TV, all the football games were on, chasing rattle reels at night. Like, and that's the thing, that there is so many more benefits, but everybody's always going to say negatives. We've talked about, everybody's always heard it and talked about it, and I bring up the fact that, I remember when I fished my first walleye tournament, I couldn't believe that the Linder brothers had paper graphs, that was an unfair advantage because they could go back and see where the weed line was. So
I spent many days in the camper cutting up the paper, gluing it into a photo album for my dad.
Yep.
And now I look back and I'm like, how did he ever know where that one piece was? But we had to cut the paper out with something he liked and put it in the graph. Yeah. I don't know how the hell he ever knew where that spot was, or if he ever did.
He might not have. It was just, he had it, so he could say this was the spot.
Yeah, you're not putting a waypoint on it, right? I remember how many times he lifted up and write something on the paper. I mean, craziness of that now, what we got for technology, and I just love it. I mean, I was thinking here as you were talking, my dad used to take the reels off our summer rods and tape them onto our ice fishing rods. Like, that's when we finally got rod and reels from the sticks.
Yep. Yeah. And we had, I still have downstairs, my basement in our family room, I have my schoolies on the little fiberglass. I think they're 2-foot poles with a little wire like bite indicator, that just tipped down. But, it wasn't that enjoyable. The only reason why I make the joke why I was ever brought along for ice fishing was to auger the hole by hand.
Oh yeah, I remember our first gas auger too.
Yeah, I mean, if we had a Milwaukee, if we had a cordless drill that could drill a hole, my dad would have went with his buddies and there would have been never any kids that went for the longest time, because, my dad would drill one hole and they'd be like, you need to drill 4 more going that direction.
Yep.
It wasn't, he didn't know. He was like, this will keep him busy, and hopefully find drill a hole over something that you find him. But yeah, it's definitely made being in the outdoors, from clothing to boots. I mean, it's endless when you think about it. Like we're able to enjoy the outdoors so much more comfortably than we ever could.
Oh, 100%. And that, think about it is, I remember seeing the first guy lift the hood of his truck to hook the jumper cables up for his electric auger. I remember that, right? Like we had a blue and red handled hand auger. And I remember my dad like looking over and the guy's lifted his hood on his pickup to hook jumper cables up to run this electric auger that nowadays, I mean, OSHA would lose their shit if they saw that thing out there. I mean, it was so sketchy. And then I got a Jiffy 10-inch and we were in heaven.
Yeah. Well, and that's, just the technology. And that's one of the things that, it helps at the end of the day. I think why I appreciate so much is one, I'm old and I've been there and done that on the downside of it. And the technology makes my job easier, but it also makes it easier for someone to get into the sport. So they're able to enjoy the outdoors,
100%. I mean, think about that. Just think about how easy it is now. I mean, you can get a flip over ice shack for a couple $100. I mean, uninsulated one man is not that expensive.
Yep.
And little flasher, they're not that expensive. I mean, for $700 to $1,000, you can be all set up to go ice fishing.
Yeah, and then and
before, way cheaper. But who was going to sit on a bucket with holes drilled in it? This is what I want to do.
This guy evidently was the sucker, But
you know what I mean? Like, just think about it. Like, just put, Jake's probably a bad example, but my wife or my daughter, when they were, my wife's big into it still, but my daughter, there's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way they would be as much into it as they are. My wife, it doesn't matter how nice it is. She's like, set the flip up. And she just makes a wind block out of it, doesn't even flip it shut. And she sits there and fishes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what she wants, and I don't blame her, right? We have that stuff. So it's nice to be able to do, but man, like there's no way dragging that freaking wood thing out there. And if you were lucky, you got some old cross country skis, you screwed to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
And now the days with the Permies and the Snow Bears and the Wheelcrafts. And I mean, all those different things is just insane in that world. But I mean, getting into the guiding thing, me and you have had hours of conversations over the guiding. And I'll be telling you on here right now, I can 100% promise everybody listening that the guide bill is coming back to legislation this year. I've not seen anything, but I can promise you they're going to bring it back.
Well, and like we've had discussions, I just hope it's brought back the right way that everybody, I think, would like to see it.
But it's such a controversial conversation, right? I mean, there's guys that are, we don't need it. And there's guys that are like, absolutely, they're stealing our resources. I just saw a thing that you probably saw it on South Dakota Ice Fishing or whatever it was. That guy just put it on there just to start the big war. And I'm like, guys, like, number one, you guys got to understand out there that the bill that was brought last year was absolute trash.
100%.
Absolute trash. And it was poorly thought through. It was just a big, and they thought they had $1 million idea, with this thing. And I'm like, this thing has it's got to have guardrails. It's got to have parameters in it. It's got to have all kinds of stuff in there. And like, no, we want to write it vague so Game Fish and Parks can do whatever they want. No. And I'll be the first one to tell you right now that everybody on Facebook that says we need to do this like Stock Lakes, Unless that is written in the bill, there is no way they're going to stock lakes.
Correct.
You can call me whatever you want. I will 100% guarantee you that there will be $0 going to stocking.
Yeah, unless that's in the bill that, it's a section 1 AC or something that's listed out that says that it has to be done that way. But
dollars must be allocated to stocking lakes.
Yep. And over the years, you've gotten to know me. I've been a component, and a lot of the game park officers always shook their head. I've asked for one forever. And I made a comment. I commented on one particular person said something on a post. It was that post you were talking about. And I said, and I'll get heat for this, but I said, if you really want to cut down the amount of guides that are guiding, then step 1, when you contact them, ask them for their LLC. Step 2, ask them for their tax ID number. Step 3, only pay them with a card or a check.
Mm-hmm.
Like if these guys are saying they're tired of all these ones that pop up and disappear and pop up and disappear, then they could be step 1 to weed out the ones that everybody complains about. I mean, it's
110%, right? I mean,
it's that easy.
You don't have to go to step 3 and pay them pay with check card. You can weed them out by the first 2.
Well, I'm just saying though, like you could really narrow everything down, and then I'm like, then ask for their guide insurance, not umbrella policy, guide insurance.
Yep.
And that's the thing that I think I get where a lot of people, I spent a lot of years in South Dakota fishing. And one of my things that I don't like from the outside looking in is non-residents don't have a possession limit. And I think that there's too many non-residents that probably have more freezer burnt fish than they'll ever eat.
So non-residents do have possession limit.
Resident.
Said that back.
Resident. Yep. I had it backwards.
Basically, that got changed because of the open land doctrine where the wardens can't come in without a search warrant. And basically, how you ever going to check a freezer in somebody's house without a search warrant, right? And so we can go down that road, and I can take heat for this. However, but the way I look at it is, okay, guys, you don't want a possession limit in our domicile. That is key, in your domicile.
Correct.
Tom, you become a South Dakota resident, you stay in Webster, and you got a house, and then you have a freezer full of fish, you are over your possession limit because it's not where you get your mail.
Correct.
You live in Pierre, your address is Pierre, you get your mail there, you're not over your limit. But a couple of years ago, they tried to get rid of the one-day fishing license, Game Fish and Park did. And it wasn't to hinder guides, it wasn't doing anything. Basically, when the habitat stamp came out, people realized the one-day fishing license was way cheaper to buy 3 1-days than it was to buy the 3-day with the habitat stamp. The right answer was what they did. Change the price of the one-day fishing license. They wanted to push everybody to buy a 3-day. And I said, are you going to up the possession limit to 3-day then? Because you're forcing everybody to buy a 3-day license. So why isn't their possession limit 3 days?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's 100% at the end of the day. But going back to the guide licensing, like, no, I said, number one, unless it's written in the bill, they're not going to stock. The other thing is, until they get the RAS systems in, we don't have the capacities in our fisheries to stock perch.
No.
So if you want them to quit stocking walleyes across the state of South Dakota and focus on perch, that's what they would have to do at this point in time.
Well, and I think the whole perch, I mean, there's been enough biologists, and you've had some on, and people that really dive down deep. You can figure this out. Part of the problem isn't just people taking perch out of the system. It's also not having high enough water because of spring rains. So for spawning, and I think that's where a lot of people just assume that, you have some good rain early and they're like, oh, we had plenty of moisture for good spawning habitat. No, because that water is that far up in the backwaters, and then a month before they get ready to spawn, it drops out again because we haven't had any water, so they don't get a good spawn. And I think I'm not going to say that it's not because of the fish taken out. There is a lot of fish taken out of the lakes in South Dakota, but also the people have to understand is South Dakota's probably number one revenue is what? The outdoors.
Yep.
I
tourism,
mean,
tourism, big factor in outdoors, right? But the other thing you got to look at too is you got to think about this is perch and crappie and all those they hang their eggs.
Yep.
They need flooded vegetation, flooded trees, flooded whatever. A walleye goes up and spawns on a gravelly bottom.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a big difference in, water levels where if water levels drop fast during a spawn, walleye's eggs go out of water, they're done. Right. But the walleyes can always kind of just slide out a little further to spawn no matter what the water level is, where them panfish need something to hang their stuff on. So if you that's why Devil's Lake is so good. Look at all the timber, look at all the stuff that's in Devil's Lake. Thing can reproduce because they can hang. There's all depths of trees. There's all, it doesn't matter really what the water level is. They have somewhere to hang their fry on.
Yep. Correct.
And that's why they can reproduce.
Yeah. And, and I wish, I doubt maybe they will get it right, but unfortunately, I don't know. We'll see how this next bill reads. I know the last one, like it was so vague and it was just, it didn't make sense. I'm glad it didn't.
Written for Northeast South Dakota.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing and I get it. We got people that list from Northeast South Dakota. We both love Northeast South Dakota. A lot of people love it, but you cannot make a region problem a state problem.
Yep.
And so if you put a law in that you think is going to fix up here in a part of the state, that problem's going to move over here. And it's not a problem anywhere else. It's just that Northeast corridor is a problem. I honestly think all they need to do is put in mandatory business tax ID and mandatory insurance.
Yep.
Leave it at that.
Yep.
Leave it at that.
I don't think I think it could be so simplified, but we'll see. It is what it is. And I don't think no matter what they do, no matter how it's written or when it's in effect, there's still going to be people that are still going to be on Facebook pages that are still going to say that they can't catch a fish or they can't go here or there because of the guides and everything else. And that's fine. Like I get that. But at the end of the day, if it's almost like a hush deal, there's so many guys that will say publicly that are against a guide, but they'll also hire a guide when they've been to an area 2 years in a row with their buddies and they get skunked or they really have a tough time. Next thing you know, they're getting a guide. And it's like, I don't understand why they make it seem like, I know what I'm doing. I don't need to. They got to remember as a guide, we spend oodles and oodles of hours on bodies of water. And so just hire the guide. Like find a reputable guide, one that has a legit business, hire him and be straight up front with him. I get probably 5 a year. The guys will call and be like, hey, we want to go on this lake. And I'm like, the bite's really not on that lake. They're like, no, we just want to know more about that lake because that's the lake we go to. I'm like, great. Just tell me up front. You want to be guided on this lake so I can show you where the structure is, how I would fish this area, where I would fish on that area. It's an easy trip for me and it's an easy trip for you. And most of the time I cut a deal on the price because I know you're just wanting to see different things that I find in the lake that you don't look for.
Yeah. So and if it goes back, you think about it. This whole thing goes back of where do you draw the line? So you're up fishing in Northeast South Dakota and I call you and say, hey, me and Sherry and Nate are going to roll out there. Can we hop in with you? We'll pay for your gas, whatever. Well, we hired you as a guide at that point.
Yep.
You weekend with a buddy and you flip them money for gas because you're in their boat, it's kind of a guy.
Yeah, and I know, and that's it's gonna get. That's what I'm saying. I don't think this bill's gonna. I think the only thing, like you said, mandatory LLC, tax ID, LLC, like I hate to say it, because I know the game parks guys get stretched anyway, but they're going to have to, when they roll up on a guide, maybe that's the best thing that they're asking, and it isn't like it's that hard to prove it. In my docs on my phone, I have my tax ID number for South Dakota and my freaking LLC paperwork. So,
it's as easy as that. Dude, the LLC takes 20 minutes and $175 to set up and $50 annually to keep it open.
Yeah. The most difficult part is setting up the tax ID number for South Dakota. That's because you got to submit this, submit that. But it's still all fairly easy. It just takes somebody that's wants to put in the work to have it done right, I guess.
We got a question here for you. I'll let you read it.
Does Tom guide at all on Calamus? I have been on Calamus probably twice, and there's just too many other lakes around there. It's not one I typically guide on, but that's not going to say no. I guide on probably every body of water at probably a given year in Nebraska. I guess a better answer, I can. I usually don't, because there's other bodies of water that I think are a little bit better for guiding on. But yeah, Calamus is a decent body of water.
So you've been guiding a long time. Are you I'm going to play a little video. I want to know if you're this good.
Barge bilge, sheephead, sauger, a whiff of smallmouth. Got to be the Mississippi River, Pool 3.
Nobody knows walleye water like the Lindners.
Are you down for that? Can we get you to?
I tell you what. Earlier this year, I got to meet the legend Al Linder himself, and I tell you what, it's I think there's times that there's different bodies of water that a guy can almost think he could just look at the water and see the wind and just know where they're at. But man, it's kind of hard to beat those old timers. They just, especially on rivers, I'll be the first to admit it. I'm not talking like the reservoir, like Sharp, Oahe. I'm not talking that. I'm talking Mississippi. Walleye fish in the Mississippi River, I'm not going to tell anybody that I'm any good at it, because it is a totally different. It's a weird animal, and every pool's got its own. There's guys in the industry that I know that fish it that are just unreal. They just look at it and they tell by the color of the water and the flow and what's going on that they need to use this bait in this area. And I'm like, how do you know that? And it's because they fish
the guy that's on pool 4 might not have a damn clue on pool 8 and 9. Right. That's the crazy part, right? It fishes so you're similar fishing, right? Wing dams, willow cats, this and that. But you watch them guys, a whole circuit up and down the Mississippi River would be really entertaining to see how consistent somebody could be.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the things I've always kind of chuckled when I see, like tournament dates. I know like Nebraska, walleye, whatever, the schedule came out for Nebraska, and there's a couple that are catch, photo, release type tournaments that they're going to implement on those. And I just always kind of chuckle, like, I would love to see like it, and everybody has said this, but I would like to see like a tournament of like one in Arkansas, one in the, like Columbia, Fort Peck, one like Kentucky, or like just a weird, just something that's so sporadic that, it'd be hard for somebody to, to be the leader of it the whole way through, because it's just such a diverse body of water structure. And that's at Mississippi. You go from the top down and it's different. None of them's the same.
Yeah.
Like you said, to have something up on the Mississippi would be cool to see.
Yeah. That must be for you.
Oh yeah. Yep. It's my brother. Mother from another mother.
There you go. But yeah, I mean, like, so back to we kind of got off beat with that, talking about different bodies of water. But, I've always said it running tournaments like I do is I think there should be new laws put behind tournaments. And I know some aren't going to favor me, right? I know some aren't going to favor me at all. But like I told them, as long as I'm in the discussion and you can hear my side of it and we can come to terms, let's do it. Right? I mean, let's talk about it. But I mean, you don't even have to have a freaking tax ID license in South Dakota to run a fishing tournament. It's insane. There's old T-Rap Trapper. What's up, buddy?
Yeah, little trapper.
And so, yeah, I mean, like, I think that should be the first step is how can you, I mean, let's be honest, we're operating businesses. And I can apply for a tournament permit with no business ID.
Yeah, and I think that's where I think in this day and age, the biggest thing that has to be focused on is just making sure like tournaments are, legit businesses, because that way there's more, consequences. There was a tournament, and maybe it was a couple years ago where they didn't pay out. Like they took in all the money for these entry. I think it was a bass tournament, but
just this year there was a big trail down south that they didn't pay out. Checks bounced. So they got that out, and then the championship boat didn't exist.
Yeah. So, but if they don't have a business, and they're just collecting and doing this stuff, how are you going to get your money? How are you going to get whatever you earned? So I think that, I guess, a kind of a blanket statement is whether it's guiding or tournaments or whatever, for people that want to look into getting to tournaments, make sure it's, a business, like it's a reputable place that's doing it.
If old Phelps, yeah, I mean, I shit you not. I think one of the first permanent shacks I fished out of was Phelby's old man. Two different ones. He had one that he built out of wood, and another one he took one of those huge white water tanks, and he cut a door in it and put a heater in there. Like he made like 3 or 4 of those things. They were awesome. But yeah, sorry. Yeah. I mean, 100%, like you got to have accountability, right? You got to, in South Dakota, we don't have to have insurance on a tournament until you get 100 boats. I told him that's stuff can happen with 20 boats.
Yep.
Right. I mean, I don't do a single event without having my liability insurance because I know.
Well, exactly.
And I'm not getting caught with my pants down in a situation. And that's one great thing about South Dakota. We passed it in legislation probably 8+ years ago where we're not responsible for the guys on the water. We're not. Your own insurance is responsible for that. So if something happens, you hit something, you sink, you hit another boat, whatever, that's your insurance that has to step in, right? But I still need insurance to go litigate it. Because otherwise I'm going to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in lawyers litigating with insurance companies to try to make me pay that deal.
Yeah. And I think, the funniest part I look at, with the whole business aspect or people, or guides guiding with, that they have maybe insurance on their truck, but not guide insurance, is I don't think people understand what they put themselves into, whether it's a tournament or a guide. Like an accident can happen. And
that's why they call accidents. You don't mean for them to happen.
Yeah. And so like, for instance, ice fishing, somebody, falls through, drives there. Let's just say they're in my pickup and we're driving out and we go under, and as they're trying to get out of the scramble out of the vehicle, they booger up their shoulder or their leg or whatever. If you're with a guy that doesn't have insurance to cover that, you really think that you're going to get that money to pay your bills? I mean,
they probably will. They probably will, but it's going to come out of your pocket, and you're going to fold up if you have an LLC, you're going to fold it up, and they're not going to get nothing.
Yep. And that's where it's just, I kind of had to laugh because when I first got my guide insurance, I couldn't believe, when I was doing waterfowl hunts all the time, the amount of, I guess, difference in pricing that waterfowl. And then if they ask me directly, do you do any deer hunts? I'm like, I do some deer hunts, very minimal. Do you do anything out of deer stands? I said, no. And they're like, okay. I said, well, why deer stands? It was like a 15% jump if it was elevated over like 7 feet tall, any kind of structure. And I was like, oh, it was terrible. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So
well, it makes 100% sense, right? I mean, that's you're adding another risk into it, so I mean, that's all insurance companies do is calculate risk.
Yep.
It's all they do. So, but yeah, I mean, in that world, but it's just, you see that people get so mad about these guides out there taking all these fish, and I understand it, right? But I also look back, and you can probably look back too. Think about when we were growing up, it was the glory days, right? It was the glory days. Well, you always heard about your dad talking about the glory days when he was doing it, right? It's all in perception, man. We thought we were growing up in the early 2000s and all this stuff was I remember driving around in high school, going up and catching 5-gallon pails full of perch after 96, 97 when all them glacier lakes flooded and blue dog flood and all them fish went everywhere. And we'd catch 5-gallon pails literally every trip out.
Yep.
Me and my buddy would fill a 5-gallon pail and come home and clean them, right? I mean, just insane amount of fish we'd catch. That was the glory days, right? So that was our perception of the glory days. Well, nowadays, what's that person that really has never done this before and doesn't get to see the glory days? I mean, it might be catching two perch for their first time, and going out and catching some fish every time. And the older I've gotten, the more I get into, I only take what I need.
Yeah.
Like, yes, if we all went out and absolutely smacked them, 100% we have. I've got pictures on my phone from a trip where it is insane amount of fish. They've never been on my social media.
Yep.
Because I don't need to do that.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, I deal with, I got the pile photos from having large groups, guiding clients, corporate, especially when we got, 10, 15 people on the ice. And, it was a year and a half ago, one of my posts got flagged on Facebook because it rose so much controversy because the guy said, well, another snow bear guide raping the waters. And I piped up and I said, well, thanks for the call out on my guide service, but bad news for you. I'm a hub guide, and it was kind of funny that, it's just, I think it's, I look back when I was younger in Minnesota, the perch limit was 100. Well, that limit didn't drop because of live scope. It's just the amount of people forget how many more people fish, and I think that kind of goes back to the states. I think our resources are finally starting to show more wear now because of the amount of people that are on that body of water in a year. It's not technology. In my mind, it's not technology. Technology has nothing to do with it because, it just doesn't. There's no way anybody can convince me that live scope is the one putting the most damage on anything, because I've always said since day one, it's an ethics problem that we have in this country with live scope, not a live scope.
Doesn't catch you the fish.
Yep. So
me and you've shared a boat half a dozen times in the last 2 years and scoping pretty much every time we're out, right?
Yep.
We do okay. We've never had a banger day.
No.
We've had good days, but we've never had that day where like, oh, Yeah, everything we cast at was on our line.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean,
instead we've had everything we cast at didn't want to eat for about 2.5 hours.
I remember the first time you came up here to guide, and we went out me and you went out that afternoon before you had to guide that group, and we were marking fish and then I mean, we had that one going vertical and doing everything it should do, and nothing would go. I mean, I think we caught like 2 fish all day. Yep. You know, we were jumping spots, right? We weren't, trying to find you a guide bite, but it was just like, and all we did was scope.
Yeah.
Just to try to find a guide bite, and we couldn't get anything to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, Trapper, very true. Still a lot of guys that don't scope that ain't ethical. I can guarantee that. Heck yeah, I would. I'm not going to say there's one more than the other, but I might lean towards the non-scopers, or 100%. And you look at game fishing parks. We've had Mark Finsel on. He's straight up catch the big fish. They're gonna die.
Correct.
I'd rather see somebody catch it and enjoy it than it dying on the bottom of the lake.
Well, and I don't know. Like I said, it's a shame that there's so much negativity that they want to go towards technology instead of just saying it's, if we really get down to it and people say, well, I don't catch the fish I used to, is it because like, for instance, it's not the same tactics and it's not the same spots that you fished for the last 18 years? I mean, and I'm not saying it doesn't always hold true, but I do know a lot of guys that, when they fish the same body of water for the last, let's say 10 years, they go the same spots to start out every time.
Well, and that's just it, right? I mean, and I love to hear it on the Bassmasters, and it drives me nuts when they say it. When I watch a lot of the Elite Series stuff, I love watching it because I love learning the more live scope's just a tool. It is. I love learning more of the aspect of what's going on and how they're running their tournament, but they always come on there and say, well, we're catching these fish that have never been caught. And I'm completely against that statement. They are catching fish in spots they've never caught them before.
Correct.
But then that fish that's out in 30 foot of water at some point went to the bank to spawn. You're just catching them before they get there or whatever, right? You're not catching fish you've never caught before. You're just catching fish in different spots you've never caught them before.
I think the best statement for that is you're seeing fish in places that you've never seen fish before because you never looked there.
Oh, 100%. We've learned so much about fishing because of it, right? We've learned that walleyes roam suspended all over the lake. They don't sit on the backside of that structure. We learn all these different things that we've never known about fish.
Yep.
How they react to baits, how they react when they take a swing at a bait. I was talking to a guy the other day that said they were pulling for salmon with live scope, and he says you would think them salmon, how hard they hit it, that they just come up and come flying by and smash that bait. He goes, not hardly ever. He goes, they'll come up and look at the flasher, then they'll go down, they'll follow that bait for a little bit, and then they'll do this, and then they'll hit it. He goes, hardly ever do you see that thing buzz across the water and smash that bait. And how hard a salmon hits and instantly is fighting, you would think that's the case, right?
Yeah.
We're learning those things, right?
Well,
we're learning all this stuff we've never known before.
I was fishing in the Black Hills second time I ever fished it with live scope. Noticed that we were catching rainbows in a lake on little jigging wraps, and we're missing on the hook set, and we started paying attention. So rainbows, when they come in, they're actually tail swatting to a certain extent. The way they come in for the bait, they try to stun it before they come back to eat it. So we were watching these rainbows come in, and they were actually coming in and spinning, and you were feeling the tail hit the jigging wrap, not them eating it. So once they did it, if you just kind of dead stopped it and didn't move it, then they returned. When they spun around, they'd come right back and eat it. Well, how many other times that we've fished them before, we just thought we were just missing them?
Yep.
So, and they were hitting it on the fall because they were coming back around for it. But when we noticed that if you just held it dead still, as soon as they smacked it, just didn't move it, it was instant. They were coming back and eating it.
Yeah, 100%. It's like trapper, like walleyes and weeds. Before scope, all you heard was had to fish the weed line. Since scope, I'm fishing the thickest of the weeds picked out by picking out individual pigs. 100%.
Yep.
Like weed line. I remember going up to the Northeast and pulling crappie boards over top of the weeds, over top of the weed lines. Or over top of the weed bed, not the line. We're sending the crappie board up over top of them to catch the fish. We weren't fishing the weed line. We were fishing the weeds, kind of like trappers saying we just didn't know what we were just covering water, pulling across the top of it.
Yeah. Well, and that was the old trick, like, having a night crawler blower to blow up, put air in a night crawler. It wasn't like it was totally unknown. But there was still guys way back that would put air and night crawlers and put them on a floating harness with an inline weight and pulling them above top of the cabbage or whatever, or different weed lines, not on the edge, but just a foot inside of them, because they knew that there was bigger walleye that were hanging in deeper in the weeds. But the live scope, and the different technology, even with side imaging, like look how many times that you'll see side imaging, you'll see the weed line, you'll see a deep cut pocket that's 10 feet inside the weed liner, but there's a hole opening, and you see a couple bigger marks just on the edge of it, and then you get in there with live scope, and it's because all those little bait fish are kind of in that opening, and then lo and behold, there's one or two big giants that were just inside of the weeds waiting to come out and ambush with bluebird sky, no wind.
Yeah. They're predators. They're hiding. Yep. They want the bait to come by them. They want easy.
Well, and I can tell you, I've probably witnessed 10 walleyes that have been caught on musky, big, like double tens or cowgirls being pulled or thrown over top of weeds. Walleye. And you're talking a bait that's 13, 14 inches long in length. So you can't tell me that they're no different. And that's one of the things that all this technology has just helped emphasize is that, the one that I think would be kind of funny to pick maybe, and I didn't when I met Al, but I would, the next time if I ever get a chance to meet him, I want to pick his brain and see what he's learned from the time he's experienced live forward facing, just because, everything that he figured out beforehand, so.
Well, I was fortunate enough to get to fish with Bob Prop Sr., and he wouldn't even let us turn graphs on some days over there. And before the boat was off plane, he was casting and had a fish on. That guy he was the best of the best, at one point in time in his life, and he didn't believe in that crap. He did what he did. He wouldn't be complaining about it today. He'd just be, well, that's what they do. I'm going to catch fish without it, But to watch, I remember taking him ice fishing, putting an underwater camera down, and you thought he was getting hypnotized by the underwater camera with the bluegills and stuff. He just couldn't believe that we could do that, And yeah, Jesus, it's just, yeah, it's evolution, man. It's going to continue to happen, and it's fun. It's getting kids into it.
Yep.
These kids love it.
Well, and that's the thing, and I wrote a blog on my website not too long ago that I had a young, I think he was 7 years old. His dad got the trip just to go out, a half day trip, just wanted to give him fishing, and I got him up front with the live scope. And this may sound kind of bad, but my job ended. Like once I taught him, here's your bait, this is falling, that's a fish on the screen. I watched a 7-year-old all of a sudden just take off with the live scope, just oh, there's a fish cast, but at the end of the day, he's not on his phone. He's not playing video games. He's outside, and that's the biggest thing that I've said over and over, and I'll say it until I quit breathing, is that one of my key components of me being a guide is to help get people in the outdoors and realize what's here, that it's a legacy that, and to me, it's just not the outdoors. It's a family tradition that, that was my grandfather, my grandfather grew up in Depression where, no joke, he would walk to school with his 22 and 2 bullets. Now on the way home, he used the 2 bullets to get something to come home. So they had dinner, and then as he was older, going duck hunting or whatever with him, or seeing the deer, he would shoot deer and had their racks. I got a little basket rack. He's got velvet mounted in my basement that he went all the way out in western Nebraska and shot. And yeah, he kept the rack, but I guarantee you that rack had nothing to do with him shooting it.
The first big deer he saw, big body.
Yep. And the stories. And I think that's where things get lost, unfortunately, on social media, with all this, the guide that. These people got to remember that people that usually get a guide are inexperienced, don't have the time or dedication to put in the work, but when they go out and they experience it and they have a good trip, the chance of them going out, and I can tell you 100%, honest, true story, Trapper was a client, and people would be like, what? Honest to God, Weston, young kid that guided for me up at Chamberlain, he got a hold of me and went on a guide trip with Weston and then got more and more into it. So that just tells you, it's amazing where someone can get their start just by a guide trip or somebody taking somebody fishing. But unfortunately, in today's world, a lot of people just don't offer up, the strange people that, hey, come fishing with me today,
I was fortunate enough to grow up with my dad, who was just obsessed with it, right? My grandpa, I don't think really ever fished. The neighbor, Jim Shelley, my dad's neighbor growing up, took him all the time. And that's kind of who the guy that got him in. My grandpa had a lakeshore property in Minnesota. I remember going up there as a kid, and my grandpa would go down to the dock with me with a can of corn and a, whatever for me to catch bluegills off the sunnies off the end of the dock. But we never went fishing together. He'd be like, well, I'm going to go up here and do this. You keep going, or whatever. That was, my grandpa didn't fish. And if it wasn't for somebody taking my dad and my dad instilling it into me and me passing it along to, frankly, anybody who wants to do it, right? We do the Lieutenant Governor's Cup with 150 kids out there.
Yep.
There's a reason. There's a reason that we do that. Is because it's so great when the mom brings her son down, or that's never, the single mom that brings her kid out there that doesn't fish, and we give them a rod and reel and they get all the stuff, and the kid is just like, one of the coolest parts of the Gov Cup now, the Gov Cup is such a special tournament in general, and it's kind of crazy because I sat here a couple weeks ago with Sean Brox, whose dad was one of the founders of the Gov Cup. And he's like, I hate to say this, but I'd love to say it. The Lieutenant Governor's Cup is going to shadow. The Governor's is not in the Governor's Cup shadow. It's going to be what everybody talks about. The Gov Cup isn't going to change, but that Lieutenant Governor's Cup with all those kids, you don't know how many people, I live in the neighborhood up here. You don't know how many people talk about all the kids a week prior to it out there practicing, making their parents bring them up to find their spot on the bank.
Yep.
Well,
and that's what, at the end of the day, that's what it's about.
Yeah, it's way cheaper to get a guide, right? 100%. Felby, you've got a boat, you've got all the stuff, but 100%.
I got one particular client that I've had for the last 8 years. And he always told me, he goes, I would rather pay you 3 times a year than buy the boat, buy the rods, buy the equipment, and then trying to figure out how to use it when I can just pay you 3 to 5 times a year and I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, Trevor, you're going to open a can of worms with the hiring a guide before the NWT. But I mean, you're 100% right? I mean, you're learning a new body of water, it's way faster than driving around out there. I mean, that's another whole controversial subject of the pros hiring a guide. Sorry, Trapper, I put you out there. But I mean, you hear it all the time. But I mean, I don't disagree with you, right? I don't disagree that. I think Felby, right? Like 100%. It seems to be way cheaper to hire a guide and upkeep and cost of all the gear. And to top it off, that guy that comes to you 3 to 5 times a year, it's way cheaper. He doesn't have a boat payment. He doesn't have equipment. And he's going to go out and have a great experience. The likelihood of him having a great experience catching fish, because I don't want to put it on you like you catch all your fish every time you're out. I don't want to do that to you, but it's going to be so much higher for him.
Yeah.
And it's getting him in the sport, and he's out there doing it. He's buying a fishing license. He's, buying this stuff, and he's contributing to our industry, guys. And that's the biggest thing. The guy that hires you 3 times a year, great. There's other guys that hire you once and then go to Cabela's or Shields and buys everything, right? That's influxing money into our system. And what I was getting at with my grandpa not fishing, my dad getting taken by somebody, I don't know very many people that just said, well, one day I was bored and I went and bought a rod and went to the lake.
Yep. Well, and that's no different than my dad. He never, I said before, I wouldn't hire. No offense to guides. Okay, Trapper, I won't take offense. My dad didn't waterfowl hunt, and it was neighbor Dan Paulson Sr. Unfortunately, he passed away this year. He took me to their duck lodge, and I'll never forget see the historical pieces of this old, and I can't think of the name of the duck lodge, and I should know it, but it's been around for eons. The pictures of all the different people, like the log books of who was in what blind. And that fueled my fire for waterfowl. And then my oldest daughter, Savannah, she actually helped develop the T-lock duck call for Nightingale when I lived in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and blew competition. And it all stemmed from my neighbor, who I grew up with. His dad just offered. He was like, Tommy, we're going to go. There's room in the blind this weekend. You want to go? And I was like, sure. I had never been before. And my grandpa was older. He loved duck hunting, but he got in a car wreck before I was old enough to hunt all the time in the duck blind and couldn't, his back was bad. So it turned into, a passion, and I get asked, what do you like best? I'm like, man, if I had to really pick one thing and one thing only, it'd be anything with a dog. There is something. When I lived so I worked for Amoco Oil a long time ago and ran a ranch in West Texas and ran quail, blues and bobs. There is something about watching dogs work that never gets old, and it's never boring. It's always something different. Even, waterfowl hunting, I never had a dog for sandhill cranes, but now I just seen the other day on my feed for TikTok, there was a lab with goggles on because of getting sandhill cranes, and I'm like, that's so awesome. For one, you just don't take any dog and put goggles on them. That's a dog you had to train to operate with goggles on, right? So, and for that dog to not care, is just, and they are, I think, that's one thing that I truly respect is the dedication those dogs put in. A guide dog or a hunting dog that's trained, those dogs just always blow me away. I've seen dogs with tore up stitches that hunted all the, I've known dogs that if the guy didn't pick him up and put him away, he'd run himself to death. So,
got 2 of them in the house.
Yep.
Yeah,
And, you got one that opens doors, so I mean, that's a cool thing.
Guide pheasant hunters, the worst part about it, the best part about it, I mean, I love a lot of things. I love socializing with the guests and doing that stuff, but I love watching my dogs work. My biggest fear is they can never tell me when they're hurt.
Yep.
Right? They can never tell me if they're starting to get hot. You can see signs, you watch them, but they're not going to stop. I mean, I've seen dogs tip over in fields.
Yep.
So people here in the city put headlights on. That's why you don't live in the city, Trapper. Get out of there.
We had tanks, in West Texas when I was out there. We had a big, it was basically a huge flatbed and had a high rack on it for guys to sit, and we drive down power breaks and let the English pointers run. We turn out 4 at a time, and we had tanks every so often. So that way, literally, we got down with the section, pick up the dog, let him get a drink, splash some water on him, and then he'd jump in and cool down. You'd switch out dogs, and you just feared, my worst feeling ever was at the end of the day, if you didn't hear the dogs barking in the box, you're like, oh no, what happened? Because it can happen that quick like that. You open the box and dog's gone. I mean,
you get guided in September up here in South Dakota. I've watched dogs tip over. Knock on wood, I have not had mine. I'm very cautious, but I mean, we've guided days that is way too hot, and there's been days that it's been 70 degrees and no wind. It's still, there's days that's too hot, depending on what kind of cover you're hunting. I was guiding with my buddy Willie one day, and we had these guys, and we were talking about how it's getting warm and stuff. And he goes, we walked some cornfields, and we went to a Milo field, and he looks at the one guy and goes, feel how much hotter your legs are here in the Milo field. And he's like, holy crap. He goes, think about those dogs. They don't get air. And they go on these long retrieves, and they get their mouth full of bird feathers, and they want to drop that. They want to give you that bird and go back, right? They're not going to stop.
No. And then, the funny thing is, I just thought of that when you're talking about dogs. I remember my old DT dog training collar, Dogtra, had, I think it was 3 D batteries in the remote, and the collar, the e-collar piece around the dog's neck, I think was like a D and a half size. It was huge, right? And then we had bells, and then seeing the Hawk screen come out. Well, now I just seen, they got all these GPS collars to the point where it can go. Garmin's got one that's phenomenal as far as the GPS on it, linked to your phone, to somebody. I mean, so, and that's no different than anything else in our hunting industry or fishing world, right? Like, the technology makes it better because
live scope of the hunting world, right? I mean, for upland birds, I mean, I don't run GPS collars on my dogs, but Ryan that I guide for has the old Tritronics, Garmin bought them. They got the stick, and he's got a 1-inch GPS screen in the bottom. Runs a lot of pointers for grouse and prairie chickens and stuff like that. And he's like, you need to get one of these. And I'm like, dude, my dogs don't point because it vibrates when they lock up. And he goes, no, dude, the best part about walking kill strips or cut corn or whatever, when the birds are blowing out way ahead, you can look at the collar and go, well, it ain't my dog. My dog's 20 yards that way. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to get one of those, because you're right. It's like, I know where my dog is in that field.
Yeah. Or if your dog gets hurt, I had a dog that, I don't know what exactly happened, but it was the dog laid down in the middle of the field, and we ended up somehow finding him, and he ended up having like a mesquite thorn or something in his foot that impaled on his main pad, and he was just done. Like, he didn't yelp. He just laid down. So that's the thing. Like, there's so many advantages to technology, and we won't even dive into what is it, Garmin, that's got a bow sight out that automatically adjusts by yardage and figures everything out, your drop automatically for you. It's like, it's just like when they first came out with a rifle scope with yardage, adjust. Was it the Eliminator, I think is who it was?
Burris Eliminator.
Yep. I remember when that came out, everybody's like, oh, it's done. It'll never happen. They'll make me legal. Guess what? There's more companies that got them out there now. Yep. Now I think Smith & Wesson or somebody's got one that's paired with the binoculars.
Yep.
Literally, you can, when you get the target and you touch it and they're looking through on the scope, it blinks. So you know that that's the same deer or elk, whatever you're looking at, and it tells the exact same yardage in the scope and in the binoculars. Yep. So it's, you know, here's a crazy little piece for you for technology. And I'm hoping somebody somewhere is going to say something. Is that
Trapper? Yes, sir.
Oh my goodness. But you know, the air tags, you know how nice that'd be, you know, when I used to run pointers, to put an air tag, just something that simple. You can put an air tag on the dog and turn him loose. And if he took off or chased a deer or whatever, you could find him, right? Like, you didn't have to shut a jacket and hopefully come back and found your scent and laid there for the next day or 2 days for you to pick him up. So there's so many different bonuses, you know.
100%.
So it's crazy.
Well, buddy, we're at hour 10, hour 11 here. We better get her wrapped up. Yeah, I know you got like 752 pounds of mashed potatoes to make and 19 turkeys and all kinds of stuff. So I really appreciate you hopping on, filling in for Chasen while he's I think he's probably meditating so he can eat more tomorrow. I know to him a little bit before the show. He went to his mom's. His brother came in. He's all up in arms over gravy. Like, it's got to be, it can't be brown gravy. And, you know, he's got a gluten allergy. And he's saying it can't be brown gravy, but the dude eats peanut butter and bologna sandwiches. So I don't know if I necessarily, when he talks about food, it's kind of always on a, okay, like, you know, but yeah, so he was all worked up over a certain kind of gravy. He had to go to the store and find it. So I think he's at home meditating, getting ready for his eats. And I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. We appreciate you guys joining on. I'm super thankful for everybody that follows every week, all our guests. Tom, you hopping on and helping us tonight. And I mean, we've thrown you random zingers and said, hop on, you know, you're always willing. I called you yesterday and asked what you were doing. I think it was yesterday, the day before. I said, what are you doing? And you're like, yeah, I got this going on. I said, would you like to be my co-host? Absolutely. You know, there wasn't even a hesitation. So I know you got a lot going on. I'll let you get back to your family, but I'm just thankful for everybody who likes and follows and shares and likes our socials. And make sure you give Tom's Guide Service a like. And if you're not a follower of the Fishing Crew or Chasen Walters, please give them a like. It helps more than you know, guys. So appreciate y'all.
Yeah. And everybody that's ever reached out or anything else, like I've always said, and Curt knows this, like, I'm one of the few guys in the industry. If you ever got a question, reach out to me on any of my platforms. I'm more than happy to help you out. Like, absolutely. That's part of the thing that I love about what I do. So, and everybody have safe travels and enjoy your time with your loved ones, because it's these holidays. I think some of us get the hustle and bustle, and we forget that just seeing that person we may not see the next year. So everybody 100%. Take care, and thankful for everybody, and enjoy the outdoors.
Yeah. Thank you guys. And like I said, be thankful to people you're around. Have a good Thanksgiving, everybody.